Dopamine is not the devil. Dopamine is how all of us get everything done. It's responsible for focus and motivation. Where it can become problematic is when we are addicted to the dopamine chasing these various processes. So I have to chase this process. And if I stopped chasing it, I wouldn't be okay. No one was going to get me sober, but knowing that I was making the world a worse place for others, making their life potentially harder, I can't sleep at night knowing that, brother. I can't sleep at night knowing that. That got me sober. One of the most common addictions is workaholism. Men in the United States have become addicted to the rewards of money, spending money, dreaming about how to spend their money, where to invest their money. You're still getting off on dreaming about that day you're going to get it. And so process addiction would be if you become dependent on these thoughts to live your life. This journey takes a lot of bravery because we have to unsubscribe from essentially everything that you see on television. And everything that the men are telling you, and even your teachers and mentors are telling you, even your parents are telling you. Your parents are saying, go do this, 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 and this, and this, and you'll be happy and successful. And you have to unsubscribe and say.
My guest today is Roland Cochrun. Roland is an entrepreneur, business owner, and investor. While Roland continues to be an authority in the medical field and personal branding industry, his full-time job is running small intensives for men who have developed sex and pornography addictions. He has completed training at the Institute of Sexual Health for Deceptive Sexuality and trauma treatment for infidelity and compulsive sexual behavior disorders. In this episode, Roland and I explore the truth about process addiction, how it differs from substance addiction, and why it's often overlooked in recovery conversations. We uncover how these hidden compulsions impact our lives and what it takes to break free. If you're ready for a truly eye-opening conversation about addiction, identity, and fulfillment, this is one you don't want to miss. So without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Roland Cochrun.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Lipkowitz, and with over 12 years of meditation experience as a mindfulness trainer and coach for high performers, I've become obsessed with helping people break free from compulsive, unhealthy behaviors and addictions and step into a life of true freedom so that they can finally become their best selves and cultivate deeper and lasting fulfillment. I've created Unhooked, the Breaking Porn Addiction podcast, to give you simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies to master your mind and optimize your life. This is Unhooked. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Unhooked. I am your host, Jeremy Lipkowitz, today joined by Roland Cochrun. Roland, welcome to the show.
I know, I'm excited to be here, man. It was, what was that? You and I were shooting the breeze. Man, it was almost 2 months ago. So, I pushed it back because I didn't want to put anything additional on our travel. And you were traveling too, and it worked out just fine.
Yeah, we've been waiting for this conversation for a couple months. A little backstory on why I have you on this podcast. So I heard your name through the grapevine a couple times, specifically from one of the people who's in my community as well. And they were like, man, Roland is amazing. I love the stuff that he's saying. It's just so insightful. So I looked up your work and really resonated with a lot of what you're talking about, what you're doing. So for the people who are listening to this, what is your mission?
Actually, I've had a lot of businesses and you always want a mission, right? This one is funny. I would say this one, I actually do have a really clear mission. It's twofold. The first aspect of it is to be, and I hope I don't offend anybody by saying this, but I think there's shit in the bed with the porn and sex addiction recovery work. If you look at when it was birthed in the 1980s, it was primarily pioneered by one gentleman. It was all of his opinion. There's actually zero research to back almost any of it. And then I would say at least 40% of it's copy and paste from substance addiction, which if you look at which is kind of an interesting thing to do, because if you look at the ins and outs of process addiction, the two couldn't be more different. It's comparing two completely different things, right? The only thing that they have in common is the word addiction, but there's a lot of people that don't even like to call sex and porn addiction an addiction because there are some people who are chemically dependent, but there's a lot of people who they can stop for a month or 2 or 3. And by definition, that would mean you're not an addict. And so I guess my mission one is to shine light on process addiction. I mean, there's probably people who are listening to me say that word right now, who are pulling their phone out and looking it up, which is sad to me. That is a total letdown and a disservice to the men who are suffering from this. So that's kind of mission one. Is process addiction's different than substance addiction, and it's no joke. If you look at some of the process addictions, the biggest one's probably eating disorders, which are the most similar to sex addiction in the sense that you need food, you need sex, and so here we have these interesting needs as humans to survive and propagate our existence. And then we have this interesting kind of compulsive behavior that's happening to both of them. So mission one is process addiction, educate yourself about this. And then here's the depressing news. When you start educating yourself about it, you're going to find we don't know how to treat it. We don't know how to treat it very well. And it's this, some people get better, some people don't. We don't really understand it, right? And so that's, I guess, mission one is understand how big this is. I mean, this problem is way bigger than sex and pornography. I mean, I don't even like to call it sex pornography addiction because I think it's a disservice to how grand this problem has the potential of being. And then mission two is a lot more simple. I think high achieving men get the shaft. I think that for those who don't know, my program, Successful Addict, is a addiction recovery program for high achieving men. So these are entrepreneurs, business owners, sales professionals, lawyers, doctors, things like that. I think they get screwed. I think they get screwed a lot. A lot of the textbooks are written for the 98% of the majority of the population, which makes sense. If you're going to make a textbook, make it for the bulk of the population so that most people reading it applies to them. You know, what you find with high achievers, though, is they live different lives. They don't dream and wish for things, they get them. They don't dream about a trip, they swipe their card and go on it. They don't dream about one day doing something, they take the risk and get after it. And those are the more kind of tangible examples. But if you look at life, they do this in a lot of areas of life. They take initiative. They don't settle for mediocrity. They're not one to make excuses, complain. And so if you look at all of those things that I just said, that recipe of existence is very, very different than maybe what someone else would. So that's kind of mission two is people I don't feel like are appreciating the ins and outs of this thing. Really, I don't think they are. It's process addiction. You read a couple books about it. It's actually interesting to read about. And then, mission two is I think high achieving men, successful men are poorly guided because I think a lot of the stuff that you're going to read in the books just simply doesn't apply to them. At least that was my case, reading a lot of these addiction books. And it's just like, I don't know. It doesn't sound like me, which, that's pretty harmful there if you're not getting my buy-in, because if you're asking me to start doing a lot of these uncomfortable things and I'm not buying in that you understand what's going on with me, it's going to harm my recovery.
How do you define a process addiction?
So there's a actual definition of it. I would read it to you guys and you guys would be more confused than before that after
I guess in layman's terms, like,
but
the
yeah,
average person,
if I was define it, you have become addicted to a thought process. So when you read the definition, it's, there's this long definition, but at the end it says there's no substance or external chemical entering the body, which means the high that you are experiencing is the result of a thought process. Example of this would be one of the most common addictions, at least in the United States, is workaholism. Guys and women, but men in the United States have become addicted to the rewards of money, spending money, dreaming about how to spend their money, where to invest their money, the awards that they receive for making lots of money. They enjoy thinking about this. But there could be an award or a reward or a sale that could be a year away, 2 years away, but you're still getting off on dreaming about that day you're going to get it. And that's what process.
The validation.
Exactly. And so process addiction would be if you become dependent on these thoughts to live your life, right? So there's nothing wrong with having goals, but when you have to have goals or you're not okay, you have to have there needs to be something that you're working towards so that you can brag about it to your friends and think about it at night and go on your phone and do your little research. That would be a sign that you potentially have a process addiction. If you were to remove that from your life, would you be okay? And I think a lot of men, if we're going to stick with the workaholism example, I think a lot of men, if you took away a lot of the daydreaming and the fantasy that they have around being successful and being seen as being successful, I'm not sure they would be okay. I think if you remove that, they would say, oh, my life's boring. I'm a waste. I'm a slug. I'm a sloth. They see no value in existing without that, right? Which would
Right.
indicate potentially there's an addiction. So I don't know if that
Yeah.
example makes sense, but
It resonates a lot. It's one of the things, it resonates especially with me. One of the things that I remember very clearly was that when I recognized my own porn addiction or compulsive relationship with porn, it actually was just a single point on a spectrum of other things I was addicted to, primarily being around validation, success, pleasure, control. It wasn't just about the porn. It was about all the ways that I was addicted to feeling good, getting validated, being the best, and needing that feeling. I'm curious just to know a little more, like, because we hear a lot about things like gambling addiction, shopping addiction, or would those count as process
Yep,
addictions?
those are processes. Yep, nothing's entering the body, and so therefore if nothing's entering the body and it's just a thought process, ooh, I'm so successful because I have these shoes now, and then 2 months later, I'm so successful because I have these new shoes, and then I have this handbag, right? That would be, and again, to delineate between when it's actually become a process addiction. If it was removed from your life, would you be okay? Would you be able to stop, or would you have to find a substitute, right?
Yeah,
And so,
need
order things that
pacifier.
you said. Yep, exactly. Because that's the thing. It's
Yeah.
like I said, dopamine is not the devil. Dopamine is how all of us get everything done. It's responsible for focus and motivation. So if you want to do something really nice for somebody for Christmas, and it's going to take some work to build the thing, plan the thing, coordinate the thing, dopamine's what's being released so that you make the phone call, so that you do the research, so that you drive to this store and that store and then the other store because they didn't have the right shade of blue, because it was important to this person to get the right blue. Dopamine's making you say, I'm not settling for this blue. I'm going to drive across town and get this other one because it's better, right? So dopamine's not the devil. Where it can become problematic is when we are addicted to the dopamine chasing these various processes. That makes sense. So I have to chase this process. And if I stopped chasing it, I wouldn't be okay.
Yeah, it's like the unhealthy dependence on it coming from a particular place and in
Correct.
a particular amount. Yeah.
Correct.
I think it's important for listeners to understand that you're not just some kind of bro speaking out of a textbook, that you actually have experience with this yourself. And so I'm wondering if you could talk just about your own personal story of overcoming this.
Yeah. I have urgent care clinics. I used to have sports medicine clinics. I've sold those. And the reason I'm saying that is in medicine, it's proof. Everything's proof. You need to show me a study. You need to show me. You can't just say something. You need to show me it works before you can say it. And so that's how I've lived my life. The first year when I was getting my doctorate program, the first 2 classes were, I can't remember the name of them, but essentially they were teaching us to read studies and determine if it's actually a good study. It was evidence-based practice and something statistics. Anyways, so the reason I give that background is that's kind of how my mind started thinking. Going through school, it was like, well, you can't just say something does something. You need to have some ground to stand on. So I give you that background because then when I got discovered by my wife, I wish I could tell you guys I came clean and owned up to it, but I didn't. I got caught, and I would say it definitely progressed. So, I don't know if the people listening have experienced it progress, but it progressed. I mean, it started as pornography, and then it progressed when I was in my early 20s to more digital stuff, but not porn, right? And just kind of amping that up. Eventually that crossed over into in-person. And once it got into in-person and once I had money, then it just started getting worse and worse and worse and worse. So really not that much I haven't done. If you guys have heard about it or read in a book, it kind of progressed to that stage. Right when I was able to remove myself from my businesses and I was no longer busy working, I had free time and I was an owner of businesses, then it got really worse, right? Because now I was, left alone with my thoughts and free time and of course money. So yep, definitely was affected by this in every way. I would say it probably destroyed my first marriage. My second marriage, I don't think, actually I was fairly sober during that marriage, so I don't think it destroyed that marriage. But I think my process addiction destroyed the second one. The first one the process addiction was sexual and destroyed it. The second one, the process addiction was not sexual, but still destroyed it because my brain, I wasn't living, I was living in my life, not living it. And so it's hard to have a relationship with someone when you're doing that. And then this third marriage was different. I really love, she's probably the first and only person I've ever loved, including my parents. I've never loved anyone or let them love me. And so when she caught me, this was different. There was, it's funny, actually, about 4 months before that, I actually had a moment where I thought about telling her, believe it or not, which is like, that's just ridiculous to say. Cause like, I was going to take this shit to the grave. And so I thought about
talk
telling
to
her
me a little bit about that. Cause I'd love to hear a little bit about that moment. The one where you thought about telling her. What? Because I imagine you must have gotten to some pretty intense emotions of like, wow, I gotta own up to this. I gotta change. So what was that experience like?
I think we were just in a really great place in life. I was very present. We were back here in Sedona. It was right when we bought our lot, and I was just trying to make sure that we loved it here before I spent that kind of cash. But yeah, we were just grounded. We love it here. I don't know if you've been here, but it's just slow. The people, there's no work here. So if you're here, it's because you really want to be here. And so, I think we were just in a place where I was feeling in my body. I was feeling in myself. I think my wife was feeling in her body and she was feeling in herself. It was a very grounded time, I remember. And just a lot of closeness. And I think, probably in hindsight, it's probably the closest I've ever been to myself while simultaneously being close to someone else who's also actively trying to be close to herself. So I don't know if I've ever been quite in that environment of so much truth and humanity. But I remember I was sitting down at the table and I said, hey, there's something I need to tell you, but I don't know if I'm ready yet. And I didn't end up telling her. And then she would discover me. That was February. She would discover me in November of that year. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it was still an active process. You were still.
Oh
active.
yeah. It's because that's the thing. Everybody listening, the thing about process addiction is a lot of guys think they're sober and they think they're in recovery just because they haven't done anything sexual. And if you're truly a porn addict and you are addicted to porn and masturbation and the stimulation that porn gives you, okay, maybe then if you're not doing it, you might actually be recovered and sober. Okay, I'll give that to you. However, at least for the guys in my group, they're not really addicted to porn, and so or sex. They're addicted to, again, validation, admiration, a lot of stuff in our groups have crossed into not virtual. They use porn as like a last resort, but usually it's like, man, if I could get an interaction with a woman, especially if I don't have to pay her, if I could get an interaction with a real woman who I have to like flirt with and earn her sleeping with me, man, that would really mean something. That would mean I'm special, whatever their story is. And so that's the thing is, even though you're not doing anything sexual or flirting, if you're still living life, getting admired for the things you're buying, your success at work, I don't know how sober you are. I think a lot of these guys, when I see them relapse, honestly, they're more in their addiction 2 years later, even though they haven't done anything sexual. And so, so to your question, was I still actively? Oh yeah. I mean, I don't think there was a second that I was ever sober, but again, I don't call this sex and porn addiction because I think that's inaccurate. I was addicted to getting people's attention in any way, in every way possible.
Yeah. I mean, I love just the way that you really emphasize that it's broader than just, hey, do I go to Pornhub and click on a video? It's the ways that kind of like people crave that sense of validation, of feeling good, of, oh, this person likes me, and the ways that we maybe self-sabotage our integrity and our values and do things that we know are wrong in order to get that little hit of, oh, I feel like I'm attractive. I feel like I'm a good person. I'm liked and wanted and sexy and all those kind of things.
Because it's so porn. Well, and porn's interesting, right? Because there's two ways to watch porn. One way is documented in the American Psychological Association. The other one is not documented, which is the one that we all know about. Porn addiction is still not an accepted term by the DSM because they can't agree on how that's classified, which I don't blame them because it's actually quite difficult to define what a porn addict is. But so there's two different ways to watch porn. In one way, the way that's actually documented in psychology is voyeurism. So you like to watch people who can't see you watching them. And you are not doing it. It is two other people or one other person or three other people or whatever the porn you're watching. It's other people and you're not them and they know that they don't know you. So you are watching them and it's voyeurism. That's what it is. And that's a very different, and it's a very, very unique and different brain. When you're not doing it and they don't see you and you're watching them, that stimulation is very unique. That's why a lot of guys can have sex with their wife and then watch porn 30 minutes later or vice versa because they're not even the same. It's two different. One's voyeurism, one's sex, right? Now, here's the second way you can watch porn. And this is the one that's not in the books yet because, again, it's poorly defined. It's more in the process addiction realm. You can watch porn. This is how I watched porn. You can watch porn and fantasize and create a story, right, to satisfy your processes that you like. So a lot of guys do. They have a genre or a couple of genres of porn, something specific they're looking for. And again, that doesn't mean it's not voyeurism, but sometimes if you're really on the hunt and you have this like pretty tight niche of things that you get off on, yeah, it might not be your traditional pornography voyeurism viewing. It actually could be, oh, I like this because it's the closest to kind of that little process that I like, right? I like that process. I can kind of picture her do for me, or I can picture myself being, there's this, oh, wow, I'm trying to force this situation and pretend it's happening. So again, two different ways to watch porn, but I think I like to bring that up because, again, kind of coming back to the big issue of how do we stop watching this? Depends what you're doing. Is it option one or option two? Because the treatment for both of those is entirely different. It's not the same. Treating somebody for voyeurism is not the same as their process. Their process is whatever their process is, and the treatment's going to be different.
I definitely want to get into the treatment, but I want to just get back to your story and just finish that up. And one of the things I'm always curious about to hear from people who have gone through this is that breaking point, that moment where you recognize, because it's one thing for somebody else to find you out and to notice something, and it's another thing for you to come to that realization within yourself to say, oh, I really have a problem and I need to make a change. And I'm curious, what was that moment for you?
For me, it's legacy. I'm a legacy guy. I've been obsessed with legacy since I was a boy. And a lot of high achieving men are. Legacy is just something that's very important to them. For me, it was legacy. I got caught. And just like most guys got caught, I reluctantly did the things, but the whole time in my head, I'm just like, fuck, I don't want to go to these rooms. I do not want to. I'm not one of those guys, right? And so that was kind of like that first couple months was like, oh, I'm not like them. I'm not like them. I'm not like them. And eventually, I realized I was like them. Not only that, I would get in those rooms and I'm like, shit, it's gonna be easier for these guys to recover than me. I was like, damn it. Here I was. I'm so used to trying to like be better than everybody. It's just been like my number one process addiction is, it's not my number one. It's probably my number two is a superiority complex of making sure no one in the room is better than me. And yeah, that was a big hit, was like, dang it, I have lost so much of myself in these processes that, these guys who've only lost themselves in like these two ways, it's like, man, they're just going to fix those two and they'll be healthy. I'm like, shit, I'm going to have to be doing this for the rest of my life. But that wasn't the breaking point. The breaking point was legacy. And what hit me was that what I was doing was unsustainable for the race, so the human race. What I mean by that is, on the surface, it was like the first reaction, at least for me, I don't know if this is every guy, first reaction was, oh, come on, it's just sex. All guys are doing this. Like, women don't understand. And that's kind of like your first thing is it's like, okay, I'll do the whole recovery thing. But in the end, like, sex is sex. It feels good. They don't understand. Like, that was kind of the original story. But then again, I started thinking about the effects of these practices. So for example, using someone, knowing I'm not going to ever contact them ever again. I don't know this person. It was a one-night stand or a two-night stand, whatever. I don't know this individual. I'm intentionally really not knowing them. And so what's the harm there if it was consent, because that's the argument, right? Is, well, Roland, it was consensual. So what's wrong? And you guys both had this sexual experience you shared. So what's the big deal? I didn't know her or want to get to know her. So how do I know that it was truly consensual in the sense that does she actually not like doing that? Is that something that makes her not feel good? I don't know this because I didn't take the time to get to know her. You see what I'm saying? And so that's where it's like, I can't necessarily say that all of those are truly consensual and actually a sharing of a sexual experience. And I have to be honest with what it's doing to me, which is a whole different topic. But so then, okay, let's go down to like sex workers, right? Oh, if they didn't need the money and they didn't find it, then what's the big deal, right? But again, if we stopped paying them, would they keep doing it? And that was like that legacy piece was, I don't think they would. And then here's the other argument was, okay, what about some of these other women? What if they did? Well, if let's say you stop paying and they still did it, what's that say about their mental health? What's that say about, if that's something that they're going to do for free and they want all these guys to look at them naked, what's that saying? And is that something that I want to participate in? And then of course we rewind all the way back to pornography, right? And that's the argument is, oh, what's the big deal? All right. It's just a video, right? Okay, well, two things. One is, again, if we didn't pay them, would they have made that video? If there was no financial gain, okay, I think that would cut down on 99.7% of the videos out there if money was not offered up in some capacity. So then everyone's okay. What about those other ones? Again, we have to question the mental health. Is this, are they actually doing this as an art form, as a sexual expression? Or is this are they doing this because of something that happened to them? And again, we have to, I started seeing a lot of these flaws in these practices and what this would do to humanity. Is this sustainable? Is this a good thing for women? Is this a good thing for men? What other side effects are happening from this culturally that we don't know about, right? Is this increasing a lot of these various crimes of different kinds? We don't know. It's hard to measure when stuff's going on in the brain. And then of course, before we move on, I have to address the guys. There are guys like, okay, what about ethical porn or what about AI? In AI, this woman never existed. She's fake. So I can't really be doing anything wrong, right? Because she's computer generated, Roland. So like, how's that wrong? I'm single. I don't have a wife. I'm not lying to anyone. I'm enjoying this fake woman who doesn't exist. What's wrong with that? What's it doing to you, knowing that you are fantasizing about fucking someone who doesn't exist? What does that do to the brain? And now all this technology is new, so we don't know. But I can't imagine that's a great practice to knowingly have sex with someone who doesn't exist. What's going to happen to these young men who are doing this from ages, 14 to 21? Will they lose interest in having sex with someone who's not going to do it exactly the way that they want to do it? Their dick looks bigger on the their virtual dick's huge. The real dick's not. That's what I'm just saying is like, I don't know if this is a good thing to practice. So anyways, that's a long answer running into some other things. But I think that was the thing that hit me was this practice was unsustainable and harmful to humanity. Propagation of strip clubs and these women having sex with a guy that they just met 10 minutes ago, and she's on a bunch of cocaine and he's sucking down Viagra just so that they can create this. I don't know. I think if we really look at the humanity of it all, a lot of these practices, they look really unsustainable and unhealthy.
What I love about that is it sounds like it was really empathy for other people. That was your gateway for change of realizing,
I didn't have any
this is actually,
I wasn't,
yeah.
I hated myself. I abandoned myself when I was 8. So me empathizing for me wasn't gonna be enough to get me sober. And honestly, I'm an intimacy disorder. So, and I don't fucking trust anyone because of how things went down in my childhood. So I don't trust nobody but me. And so there was no wife, no one was going to get me sober. But knowing that I was making the world a worse place for others, making their life potentially harder, I can't sleep at night knowing that, brother. I can't sleep at night knowing that. That got me sober.
Yeah. And I think this just highlights that there are so many different doorways into recovery, like so many different insights. I was just reading up on Tony Robbins, his 5 stages of transformation framework. And one of the 4th stage, after you have this breakdown moment, hitting rock bottom thing, the next stage is some kind of moment of insight. And I think in all of our lives, there's so many different insights that we can have that can be the doorway into recovery. And then once you're in that process of recovery, you start having all these other insights. If you do start developing empathy for yourself, or if you start with empathy for yourself, then maybe once you get in, then you start recognizing empathy for others and saying, wow, this is really actually harmful for other people. But you just need one doorway into recovery.
Yeah, and I
Once
think
you get in
everybody
there,
has
the whole
a
world
different
opens.
one. I think my guy's legacy is big for high achievers. It's just for whatever reason, it's just something that seems to be baked into their DNA. But I think other people, it can be the lack of presence, just the feeling of being in your body and then doing these things that take you out of your body, right? If that's something that somebody's really into, like my wife, she's really into stuff like that. So that's how she measures things. Like, this is good because I feel in myself. This is bad because I feel out of myself. Whereas for me, it's just not really my jam, at least yet. And so for me, you know, it's a lot of like legacy, like is what this do. So I think you bring up a good point. I think for all of us, when in recovery, don't just get so focused on the checkbox thing. Listen to the podcast, read other books and apply those books to recover. Because again, I think to your point, one thing that I think will put you in long-term recovery, long-term sobriety is if you can tap into that thing for you. If it's not legacy, then find the other thing. If it's not being in your body and enjoying that feeling of presence and being in yourself, then find something different. But I think every single person, there's something that's baked into them that bothers them that it happens. And you need to find that because it either bothers you that that's happening for you or bothers you that it's happening for others. But that's when I think things start to change, is when it's like, hey, this is no longer an isolated problem. This is doing something to our existence that's bad. And I think when you can feel that incongruence, that's long-term sobriety. It's again, when it's a checkbox and just like porn is bad. Oh, I can't do this or my wife will leave me. If it kind of stays in that realm, it's not that bad. Other guys are doing it, and there's billboards of girls in their thong bathing suits. And, if that's where you're still at, is like, oh, I just can't do this anymore, but everybody else is. If you're still kind of living there, and trying to not participate, I don't know, man. I think you have to tap into something. Yeah. It's just not, not, I don't think humans care enough about, I don't think we care enough about the transactional phases of our culture. I don't think that's enough. And so if you just if that's your only measure of stopping, I don't know if you're going to recover, in my opinion.
Right. No, I think that's so well said, that finding ways, and we're so lucky, there's so many different podcasts and books and YouTube channels and resources that you can find one that really speaks to you, that strikes a chord and resonates with what stirs your soul and gives you that motivation for recovery. And like you said, the more that you can connect it to something greater than yourself, to your legacy or the way our society works or something just bigger than that. I'd love to hear if there were any books that were very important for you in this process. Like for me, there were a couple of books in my journey that really helped me along the way. And I'm curious if there was any book or mentor or source of wisdom that helped you along the way.
No, there's been a ton of books that helped me in my life that also that probably have helped me in hindsight and recovery. But yeah, I was fairly disappointed. A lot of the reason why I decided to go hard in this thing and actually figure it out and then create something to help people was just so unimpressed, man. I'm just like, I don't know. I'm reading these things. I'm just like, nah. I'm like, come on, man. Like a problem that affects nearly 400 men in the U.S. alone, probably more, but truly diagnosable, 480 million men in the U.S. And it's like, come on, we don't have, this is the only thing we have.
Wait.
Here's what I would say.
480 million men? Hold on. How many people are in the U.S.? I thought there's only like 300 million.
Let's see
people in the
here.
U.S.
We have.
We got to get a new stat.
How many population?
I think the U.S. is like 380 million.
How many U.S. population? Let's look at this. 380 million. So it's because it affects, what do they say, 12% of men. So it's 40 million. How's that sound?
Okay. Yeah.
Is that better?
That makes
Is
sense.
that better?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember. What was I saying? 400 million? Yeah, that would be.
I was like,
that would be
400 million men in the U.S. Like, my bullshit
Our
detector's
40
like, hold on a second.
Yeah, 40 million. But yeah,
Yeah.
the books I was just so unimpressed. So, but here's what I would say to that. The thing that changed me were two people. The first one was a guy who I actually met in treatment. Ironically, I met him in treatment. He was during the same treatment phase, I guess, when I was there with the other guys. And he is a very famous addiction treatment doctor. He runs one of the most successful, he just sold it, but it was one of the most successful alcohol and narcotics treatment facilities. And it was funny. I was like, oh, dude, like, here you are suffering from sex addiction. Like, and that's when he told me, just straight face, he goes, this is process addiction. He goes, they're not the same. Because they're entirely different. And so for the whole time I was at treatment, I was just asking him questions like, okay, tell me about this. And he was like, yeah, we don't even have eating disorders. He goes, these poor gals, he goes, we can get them to stop starving themselves. But he goes, honestly, they're tormented for the rest of their lives, weighing themselves on the scale, counting their calories, feeling guilty about having a milkshake. They're haunted for the rest of their lives, whether they're starving or not. And they go in and outs of periods of like, what we would call in the porn addiction world, slips and relapses. They have, I ate too much for breakfast out at brunch with my friends, so I'm not going to eat lunch or dinner to make up for that calorie breakfast. The equivalent of us would be, that'd be a slip. A little, I just watched porn and masturbated. Whoops, sorry, I won't do it again tomorrow, right? And so anyways, he's kind of talking to me about this. But that was kind of like turning point one, was I was like, damn, how come I'm hearing this from you and not from like everyone else? Cause I was swiping my card for anybody to help me. I love my wife so much. I was like, you guys got to get this out of my life. And, yeah, I wasn't doing anything, but man, I just didn't feel treated. I'm like, okay, like here I am 8 months deep, 9 months deep. And I'm like, I don't know, I'm not that different, man. I'm like, I still kind of want to do all this shit. I'm just not doing it because I don't want to get divorced. But like, I don't necessarily say at that phase I had stopped wanting to do it yet. So that was turning point one. Turning point two, I know these aren't books, but turning point two was Dr. Omar Minwalla. I don't know if you've looked at a lot of Minwalla's stuff. So Minwalla is hated by the sex addiction community because he's he's actually not a certified sex addiction therapist. He is a sexologist. So he studies human sexuality. And so his approach is quite different, right? He doesn't have the, I don't know, for lack of a better word, kind of the whole Christian Puritan kind of spin on it that a lot of the sex addiction world has with it. His is like, hey, if we're not lying to anybody and it's truly consensual and it's not hurting anyone, and if at any point in time we recognize that it is, we put an end to it. For him, it's like, there's nothing wrong. Like the only thing wrong is the lying, like you not telling your wife, that's the one thing wrong. But yeah, you're doing all this other stuff as long as it's consensual and these people aren't minors, nothing wrong with what you're doing, right? So anyways, he's got some flack for that because his approach is just interesting. But he introduced one thing to me that I think is a big problem, especially for porn addicts, which is I shouldn't say a lot. There's a lot of young men who part of the allure was that they couldn't do it. They weren't allowed to do it. And they don't know that because they were 12, 11, 14. So they weren't really using that brain. They would just see this naked girl, masturbate, and enjoyed it. But what they didn't really know is they weren't allowed to. They were sneaking around doing it. And so part of the allure, part of the template is doing something that you're not supposed to do. And a lot of guys, if you ask them, they would say, oh, no, that's not what I'm doing. Well, I know, because from 18 and on, you didn't have to do that anymore. But you when it started, that was the big thing. And so the reason I bring this up is he talked about how when guys start to have their behavior policed, watched, it makes them want to do it more. And that was really pivotal for me because I was like, oh yeah, I'm not going to do this. I love my wife too much. I'm putting an end to all this stuff. But it was funny as my behavior was being policed and I started doing, because my wife's going to all these programs. So now she's like, oh, we need to do a check-in. I need to know where you are. So we need to do a check-in every night. And we're putting these apps on your phone. And it was funny. The second I started getting watched, I started having cravings to do stuff, man. But it wasn't to like get aroused and have an orgasm. It was, I didn't even need to get an erection. That wasn't the goal. The goal, I didn't even really want to see pornography, because if I saw pornography, then now I'd have something to actually tell her. I was like, man, what could I see? How can I, it was this whole process around like, what can I do to get away with this? And it was so weird, and I hated it. I hated it so much. And it turned into actually a pretty strong compulsion, to be honest with you. And then finally I met Omar, and he was talking about the deception and control piece, and where if you're being policed, if you have this check-in, if you're doing these routine polygraph tests, if you're, you just want to defy and rebel. The human in you is like, don't treat me like a pet. I'm a person. And you don't like that. And so that was a huge thing for me. So I know those both weren't books, but those are the huge turning points for me in my recovery, was understanding that, wow, okay, process addiction, man, this thing's big. This is no joke. This is unique to me. No other person has the process addiction I have. So no wonder going to 12-step meetings didn't work for me, because I would go there and I'm like, nah, it's not me. I don't do that. I don't do that either. I feel like I was in the wrong room. But now it makes sense. If there was a different room and we weren't talking about sex and porn addiction, we were talking about processes that we're addicted to, I might actually feel like I'm in the right room, because while his process is different than mine, I can now relate, because it's like, yeah, I don't do that, but I do something similar, right? Because now it's like, oh, right. And I think that's where another thing that gets failed in this community is, it's not like AA where we all walk in and we're all drinking alcohol, right? We all share that. We know where to get it. We know where to buy it. We know where it's a shared experience. Process addiction's different from person to person. It's different for every single one of us. And so that whole dynamic of it was a huge one. And then, Omar Minwala kind of talking about how control and deception can actually be more of it than arousal and sex. I really appreciated him talking about that, because to me, that was what finally cracked the code. It was like, I couldn't figure it out. It's not sexual. I was telling my wife every night, she's like, why are you doing this shit all that? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I can't figure it out. And then when Omar told me that, it was funny. Because the second he told me what I was doing, I didn't want to do it anymore, because I was like, well, that's stupid. And it lost its power over me, because I was like, well, that's dumb. I thought it was cool. And I was about sex and shit. I was like, yeah. But like the second I found out that it was like, oh no, you're just doing it because she's telling you not to, and you're trying to rebel and defy and prove that you aren't going to take shit from people. And the second I realized that, I was like, well, that's childish. And so all of a sudden I was like, well, I'm not doing that then. If it's sexual, then okay, there's some, but if it's just me being a little boy, I'm not interested anymore.
It's funny how clarity and just seeing things clearly can be so much a part of the healing process of just, you don't even need to put in that much effort once you see clearly what's going on. Or like, I mean, you still need to put in some effort, but the amount of effort is so much less once you just start to see the inner workings, like how the dynamics of this compulsive behavior are playing out.
Again, and that's why I like talking about process addiction, is if we ignore that and we keep this whole thing about porn and sex and boobs and vaginas, it's just, again, to your point, your brain's not connecting the dots. And so I think a lot of guys are just left in the dark. Whereas when we really bring this back to the truth of it all, it's a process addiction. And you start to connect the dots of like, oh, those are the processes I'm chasing. Then it just kind of the story of like, oh, sex. That one, like, it's like, well, I like to have sex and I don't want to not have sex. You know what I'm saying? So if it's just sex, there's a lot of your body that's like, well, I don't necessarily want to not have sex. And can I even ever get to that point? And so we're completely corrupting the whole process. And so I love what you said about that clarity. To me, I think when guys really start to look at the process of it, that's why in our groups, we do everything as groups, and the guys present their process addictions to the group. And we have this format of which we do this. And the reason we do it is it's really hard to know what your process is. But then when you see a guy present his, it's, oh shit, I kind of do something like that. Oh, interesting. I wonder if I do that. And then the next guy goes, oh my God, I do that. And when that did that, it got worse, just like when you did it and it got worse. And so I think to me with process addiction, because every guy has a different process addiction, I think recovering on your own is almost impossible. I think there's gonna be so many blind spots that you'll be in this relapse slip cycle forever. And it's not because you're weak, but it's because you just have these blind spots in your processes. And so they just keep having power over you. That makes sense?
Yeah, definitely. Like doing it in isolation, you might be able to get a streak of 30 days, not watching porn, but you're not actually going to the root of the issue, which is the underlying process. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because for me, my journey of recovery, it wasn't through any 12-step group. It wasn't through anything related to any kind of substance addiction. My recovery was through Buddhist meditation and Buddhist philosophy. And I'm hearing so many similarities between kind of the process of process addiction, but also in the Buddhist framework of understanding craving, understanding the way that we latch onto wanting to feel good and wanting that validation. And it's really about the underlying process, the dynamics of the mind. And,
it's truth seeking, whatever you want to call it. You can call it Buddhism, you can call it science, psychology, you can call it Christianity, whatever you want to call it. It's all the same. That's kind of why, I've always enjoyed, I don't have a particular religious affiliation, but I've always enjoyed Buddhism because Buddhism isn't a religion. A lot of people don't know that, but it's not. It's a lifestyle. You don't even have to go to a church to be a Buddhist if you don't want to. But to your point, it's truth seeking. And what I mean by truth seeking is what's true. That you want the attention from that group of 28-year-olds at the table 2 tables down from you, or you want to be a kick-ass stand-up husband. You want to be the guy who saw a problem in his local community that no one was solving, and you're like, fuck it, why is no one solving this? I'm sick of sitting around. I'm going to go solve it because I'm tired of sitting around. My dad was complaining about it. Everyone's complaining about it. And here I am. I grow up. I'm my dad's age now. And everyone's still complaining about it. I'm going to fix it. And you're going to be the guy who fixed the problem that everyone's complaining about. And they're going to appreciate you for it. Like, you see what I'm saying? It's truth seeking. What's more important? You getting that attention from strangers that you're probably never going to speak to, or this epic shit that makes a difference, the stuff that really, fulfillment that lasts. And I think we just don't do enough truth testing. We watch television, we see a bunch of rich guys banging a bunch of hot chicks and driving nice cars, and we think, oh, okay, I'm just going to go bang a bunch of hot chicks and drive nice cars and make money. And we don't really stop for a second to just think for a second. What about that's going to make you happy? And unfortunately, most guys have to learn the hard way. They got to get there and then realize this is a stupid plan. And here's what I would say. You don't need, a lot of people tell me this. A lot of people say, well, Roland, easy for you to say because you made all the money and you did all the stuff. And then now you can go back and say like, oh, I didn't need any of it. Yes, I get that. It is easy for me to say because I did get it. Okay. So I'm not disagreeing with that statement. Here's what I would say though. The lessons that I learned, I could have learned faster and without a whole lot of heartache and pain that I've inflicted on myself and on others. I did not need to earn the money and do all of that to learn those lessons. My mom already told me all those lessons when I was born. Like by 8, I already knew everything that I learned the hard way. I learned it when I was 8 years old. My mom told me money's not going to make you happy. Fulfillment comes from within, not outside. And these are things that I've heard from my mom, my grandma, wise people told me this all the time. But again, to get back to that question of like, oh, easy for you to say, Roland, I'm just telling you guys, you can learn these lessons. These lessons don't need to be learned that way. That's one way to learn them. I would highly counsel you don't do what I did and you learn them without getting there. It's unnecessary to learn the hard way. But I think to your point, I don't think people are thinking about thinking. And because they're not thinking about thinking, they don't think that thinking is not their own thoughts. And so they just pull the trigger on every single freaking thought that comes in their brain. And, next thing you know,
well, I think it relates to the massive influence that society has in terms of what we see in movies, what we see on television, commercials, and social media. There's so much influence and not just passive influence. It's like billions of dollars are spent trying to tell you that if you get this new gadget, if you drive this kind of car, if you wear these kind of clothes, then you will be happy. And the relative influence of voices of wisdom, of people saying, hey, fulfillment comes from within, money's not going to buy you happiness, getting everybody in the world to like you and validate you isn't going to make you feel good about yourself. Those voices are relatively small compared to the societal influence.
It is.
But you're right, they're out there.
It is. And here's what I would say to that. As somebody who has a lot of money and has bought the things that society told me were the gatekeepers to influence, right? So I had to have a certain car. I had to have a $7 million house. I had to have there was these things that I was told, oh, if you have all these things, then people will listen to you because you've made it. That's bullshit, but it's also not bullshit. It's bullshit because that's stupid. Why do you have to have all those things to have? What do those things have to do with wisdom and happiness? That nothing. They're completely unrelated. So it's BS in that way. But if I should say everyone, if a lot of people consider those things to be the key to influence, can you influence people without them then? And so that's where I do have a soft spot to some degree for this is, can you play the game without it playing you? So that's a huge focus of our program, because a lot of the guys in my program are successful men. That's a big thing is, hey, let's play. I'm not telling you to stop playing the game. Let's play the game. Let's play it. It's a fun game to play. And as our society is set up, if you don't play the game, it's harder. No doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Less people listen to you. You've got less resources. You're not gonna be able to go to some of the places where some of the people are who you might want to influence and change and help. So yeah, doors start closing in this world if you don't have money and if you don't look the part. Let's keep all those doors open. But remember, they're just doors that are open now. So I always tell everybody, when I wear my Aquanaut, I know it impresses people who know what an Aquanaut is. I know it impresses people who are like, that's a Patek Aquanauts. But I also know it doesn't make me a better person. It is a tool to influence people who know what a $120,000 watch is. But if I lost the watch, if it was stolen, or if I went bankrupt and I had to sell it or something, I wouldn't become less of a person. You see what I'm saying? So I think that's the challenge of existing in this world is there's no doubt that doors close if you don't play the game. There's no doubt. If you don't look the way people want you to look, act the way they want you to act, doors start closing. People stop listening to you. And I hate that. Shouldn't be the way that it works, but it's how it's working right now. So keep all those doors open, but don't get your identity lost in what you're doing. I'm doing this to open this door only. Is that making sense? I'm only doing this to open this door, but I'm not a better person because because it's open for me. It's just this weird, I know it's this weird way that this world has been set up. And so I have a very healthy distance between, hey, if you are only going to open that door if I have this rich wristwatch and I have this car, and I really want on the other side of that door because I have some beautiful, meaningful work that I'm going to do when I get over there, then I'm going to do the things required to open it. But don't you think for 1 second anymore, old Roland would have got high on his own supply. Now I can get that door open. I can know that I did the things to get that door open, but I have a healthy distance between that and me. Just because I had to do those things to get it open doesn't mean I'm going to let it get in my head. Not anymore. I used to.
Yeah.
Not now. Right. But I think that's kind of the gate. I think that's the gateway to compulsive behavior and process addiction is, do you know the difference? Do you know the difference between doing something to open the door, and do you have a reason for the door to need to be open? And what's the reason? Because a lot of people are opening those doors so that they can feel important. And if that's why you want the door open, then that's not going to end well for you.
So it comes back to understanding your intention, understanding why you're doing things. And I think also one of the insights that so many men on this journey have is what genuinely brings fulfillment is making an impact and making the world a better place and being of service. And if money can help you do that, if that can help you open those doors and make a greater impact and make the world a better place, then why not play the game? But just know why you're doing it and don't be addicted to the validation that comes. but just use it as
I've
a
seen
tool.
so many of my mentors sell out, and it always breaks my heart. They had such a pure heart, and they kept it pure. And then they get into the influencer crowd of the people who you and all the listeners know who I'm talking about. They get into that crowd of personal development influence. And when they're there, yep, they all sell out. They have this beautiful product. And the next thing they're selling a $997 some bullshit. But, it's just like, man, I hate seeing that. And, but that's that's to me, if we're talking process addiction, that's how you gauge your recovery is, hey, when I get there, and these guys are all making 70 times the money I am selling little trinkets to people. And I can sell a real product that actually changes someone, but the margins are tight on it. Can I sit in this room and say, you know what, I feel good about doing this and making $80,000 a month, even though all these guys are making $80,000 a day? Can I be okay with that? And I think that's where it really shows you the health of where you are with your process addiction is in that room. Can you be proud of you without letting them take your trophies away from you and make you feel worse about what you're doing? And took me a while to get there, I'll be honest. Every time I got in that room, I was always like, man, I thought I was doing well. I need to go. I need to get back to work. Right. But now I'm getting better. I can be in those rooms now and stay true to what I want to do rather than let them convince me that I'm not enough.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but for me, it's like this process of recovery. It's a continual process of peeling back layers of the onion and looking at the more and more subtle ways that I am addicted to my ego or addicted to wanting to be liked. And, the more that I can peel back and say, oh, look at the ways that I'm clinging on to wanting somebody to like me or wanting to have my pleasure. It's a never ending process of self-discovery and self-awareness.
And it requires bravery. I'm not a Christian. I don't identify as that. Again, I don't subscribe to any particular religion. But one of my favorite books is the Bible. And in the Bible is literally a book about what we're discussing today. It's about one gentleman who said, hey, it's going to be hard to be you. It's going to be hard to be you. It's going to be hard to do the right thing in a world of people who don't want to be themselves and aren't doing the right thing. You're going to be weird. And in that story, he was murdered for it. But they told him, he said, hey, just say you're not the son of God and I'll let you live. But, say it and I won't kill you. And he was like, I'm not saying that. And so then they murdered him. And he could have easily just said, fine, I'm not. And then they would have let him live. But he was like, nah, if you're putting me on the spot and I have to sell out, I'd rather die. And that's the beauty of that story is what we're talking about is bravery. To not objectify women, it takes bravery. To not want attention from women transactionally takes bravery. Because it's, oh my gosh, can I live without that validation? Can I actually not do that anymore? Or even for men, for that matter, not try to impress men. My process addiction, I wanted to impress men way more than I wanted to impress women. Way more. Way, 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 way more. I wanted men to want to be me way more than women to want to have sex with me. Way more. And so that's what I would say to that is, this journey takes a lot of bravery because we have to unsubscribe from essentially everything that you see on television, and everything that the men are telling you. And even your teachers and mentors are telling you, even your parents are telling you. Your parents are saying, go do this, 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 and this, and this, and you'll be happy and successful. And you have to unsubscribe and say, I'm going to do things that make me feel fulfilled. And I think until you have the bravery to do that and know that people are still going to love you when you're doing you, I think that's why we have so few people. That book, the Bible, that was written a long time ago. I wouldn't say that we've learned our lesson. I would say we regressed. Every single thing that's written in that book, I think we have taken steps further backwards as a culture. We are subscribing to fallacies more than ever before. But that book, for anybody, if you want to go through and reread that book as a book about a brave person doing brave things, that's all that book's about. It's no different than Siddhartha. It's the same thing. It's a book about subscribing to different lives only to be disappointed time and time and time again. That's all the book is. Power is not going to do it. Money's not going to do it. All that's the Bible's just riddled with, there's going to be a lot of people telling you that this is going to make you feel happy. And it doesn't, right?
Yeah, it definitely takes bravery and courage to do this work, to go into the unknown and face your fears and let go of I mean, in a lot of ways, it's letting go of the comfort blankets, the pacifiers, and stepping into the desolate wilderness, the unknown, and learning how to live in that new reality. This has been a fantastic conversation. I'm so glad we got you on the podcast finally. I feel like, I have a list of so many other questions. We might have to bring you back on.
Yeah, we'll do we'll do a
round
part
2.
two in a couple months.
Yeah, yeah. Well, last question, where can people get connected with you and find out more about your work?
Yeah, successfuladdict.com is the program's website. And again, it is designed for high achievers. Now, a lot of people ask me, Roland, what's a high achiever? Right? I'm making okay money right now. I'm making about $150K a year. Like, am I a high achiever? Listen, a high achiever to me, the way I define it's a mindset. Do you refuse to settle for mediocrity? Are you relentlessly pursuing your full potential? That's what I'm looking for when I'm on the phone. So yeah, we've had guys in the program who own a couple businesses and make $150,000, $200,000 a year. That's a high achiever to me. It's just because a lot of the guys in my program are making millions of dollars a year does not, to me, it's just because their businesses are bigger. They don't, the mindset between him and the other guy isn't really that different. So, but yeah, it is for high achievers. I interview every single person who fills out an application on the website just to make sure that they are, in fact, a high achiever as I define them. And the reason I do that is connection is the most superior treatment to compulsive behavior. We all know that. It's by a landslide. It's like 3.8 times more effective than the runner-up. Is the most effective when you're going to overcome compulsive behavior. We connect best with people that we can relate with, people that we feel like live a similar life to us, like they understand us. And so the reason that I've congregated high achievers is I need them to connect. And so I'm not doing it because for some elitist superiority nonsense. I'm simply doing it because these guys have common problems. So if you're listening to this and you are a high achiever and you resonated with a lot of what we said, you're probably a good fit. So fill out an application and you and I can jump on the phone and see how it works. I'll warn you, it's not the cheapest program in the world. We do have live events twice a year that are all included. So your room at the resort, all your food. We come out to my house on the final night and we have our closing ceremony. A private chef come out there, play some yard games. And so it's a very bougie recovery program, and it ain't cheap, but at the same time, you get what you pay for. And I think, when you try to cost cut your way to recovery, I'm not sure that's the best route.
All right, man. Well, it's been fantastic having you on. Looking forward to round 2, and hopefully I'll see you in Sedona someday.
Yeah, I think it's going to have to be round 3. I'm going to have you on my podcast, and we'll come back here and do part 2 on yours.
That sounds good. All right. Thanks for listening, everyone. See you guys on the next episode.